Hi, it's Stephen here at Bland Designs, and I want to show you what my latest project's been. And this is making my own collage papers. Now, the idea came to me when I was scanning through some YouTube videos, and I saw this one video where a lady was using baby oil on various types of text paper, music paper, and tissue paper. And so I tried doing this as well. Now, the whole idea of using the baby oil is that it's going to make the paper more translucent. So you can see my hand through the paper right there now, and you can also see the text on the back side coming through too. You basically just lay down your page, make sure your work area is well covered, drop some baby oil onto it and let it spread out, and you can move it around with a paintbrush or a makeup sponge or just your fingers. In fact, I just use my fingers, and put it all over and let it soak into the piece of paper. And after you've done that, it will make it very translucent. The thing is though, it also, as it sits there, it's very slippery, it's very oily. So I thought, well, maybe if I put it between a couple of pieces of paper towel, like kind of sop it up a little bit, that would help. So I did do that, and it did help a little bit. But then I found that if I let it sit overnight to try and dry, well, it's oil, so oil doesn't really dry. So I placed it between a couple of sheets of newsprint and let it sit again overnight, and that soaked up some. But it was still a little oily, so I sprayed it with some fixative, clear fixative, and that seems to help it, so it doesn't feel as oily. And you can see here, I tried it on one that had a picture on it, and I'm really not sure if the effort is worth it, really. I'm not sure how these will react to different forms of media that I may put on them. We'll find out. I did it on a piece of Tim Holtz tissue paper, but really it doesn't make a lot of difference on Tim Holtz tissue paper because it's already very translucent to start with. So I don't think it's really worth the effort on that. So you might want to give it a try, you might not. I'm not that impressed with the final result. I don't think it's worth the effort. And like I said, it's kind of greasy and sticky. So then I was reading in a book that I happen to have about collage techniques and making your own collage papers, and there was something called crystalline paper. And basically what the person was doing was she was taking a sheet of good quality tissue paper, and it's important it's good quality, and briared gesso over one side of it. No, sorry, not gesso. On this one she put fluid gel medium, a gloss one, and she just spread that all over it, set it aside, and let it dry. And you might be able to do it with a heat gun, but I just let it air dry. And then you flip it over after it's dry and do the same thing on the other side. Once it's dry, you take a water bottle, spritz it with water, and then drop some acrylic paint onto it and let the paints kind of merge together and flow around back and forth. You can use a paintbrush, you could use your fingers to move it along. I found though that I think the acrylic paint I was using might have been too thick for this because it didn't move that much, and so I added a few more colors and mixed them together, and I got what you see here. So I thought, well, in for a penny, in for a pound, what the heck? Let's drop some gold paint on it. Let's, sort of make a design with that. And then I did a little bit of scratching into the surface as well to get the colors underneath to come out, and that's called sgraffito. And I just set it aside and let it dry. And it took a long time to dry. Like I said, I think the acrylic paint was way too thick on this. Just to back up, I did try putting the matte medium, the gel medium, onto the tissue paper, but it just ripped it to shreds. I think it was too cheap tissue paper. So I might try it another time with good tissue paper. But anyways, so I got this, and I've let it dry, and it's got a really like glossy finish to it, and it's got kind of it's a texture. You can feel the texture, so that's what I mean. I probably put the paint on too thick, but it's also got the feel of a piece of vinyl as well. Now you can rip it, as you can see. So I am going to rip it up to use it in my art journal, and we'll see how it works with that. The back is kind of cool too. You get this effect with the paint as well. The back didn't have anything on it, it was only the front. So it's got that leatherette kind of feel. So then I went on and I took some more deli paper. Again, this was supposed to be a technique you use with tissue paper. And the idea here is to take some gesso and a brayer and you put the gesso sort of in the center and you spread it out to the edges. And you're not putting on a very thick coat, and you cover one side of it. Well, I used it on deli paper. I tried it on the tissue paper. Same thing happened to me. As I said, I think the tissue paper is way too cheap that I was using because it just ripped and went into a ball, and I got a little frustrated with it, crunkled it up, threw it out, and got out the deli paper. So I spread the gesso using a brayer on the deli paper, and you have to be a little careful because the deli paper will stick to the gesso a little bit, but it's easy enough to pull the paper apart if it does that. And then I did several sheets of this, and then I just set them aside to dry. Once they had dried, again, I probably could have done it with a hairdryer, I added color. Now, I just used the Illusion spray inks and sprayed them all over the surface. And I wasn't being very particular about the colors that I picked. I was just careful that I didn't get mud. And I just spritzed them all onto the surface, onto the side that had been gessoed, and I put them aside to dry. And again, I could probably use a heat gun, but I didn't. When they had dried, I brought them back, and I got out my stencils, my 12 by 12 stencils. Again, I was just picking stencils at random. I had no rhyme or reason to my technique, nor did I have a theme. Threw the stencils down, and still using the Delusions ink spray, sprayed it through the stencils. And some of them kind of blurred a little bit because they went under the edges, but that's okay because, again, these are collage papers. They're going to be torn up and used for art journal pages. So after I set those aside with the stencils and let them dry, then I got out some background stamps, and the ones I used here were all Stampers Anonymous ones. Some of them are stamps I haven't used at all yet. I've had them for a while, but I haven't used them at all yet. So I was, again, not caring what I found. I just picked them up, slapped them down. I used archival inks from Ranger for this. And the reason I use the archival is because they're water permanent. So, if I'm using them in a collage journal, then I put wet medium down, they won't run. Set those aside to dry. The next layer was more detailed stamps. And I just grabbed again at random. I had no theme involved here, just grab what happens. So you can see on this one, the stamps I used, but I also tried a gradient effect with the inks in here. And if you got a little too much ink on, I let them run. So you can see my run marks as well. Just whatever happened, I let it happen to it. And I think actually it turned out quite nice with this gradient effect. And I used a script stamp in the background and this navigational compass one. On this one, I let the gradient come out from the center. I just sprayed one color in the center, another color around it, another color around that, so it radiated out from the center. And I had this eye stamp that I hadn't used before, so I threw that down. And on this last one, I have a figure of a lady's face. I hadn't used that one before, and some roses and some other background texture stamps on that. So actually, I think they turned out pretty nice. But look at the back of these. This is the side that didn't have the gesso. And I wouldn't have thought that the inks would have run through them, soaked through that much, but they did. So this, you're getting 2 for 1 here, because the backs of these are really nice. And the back, because they don't have gesso, are a bit semi-glossy as well. So really, you can use either side. I think I might try in the future, just forget the gesso and just do the spray inks on one side and see how that works out. Without the gesso, and see what you're going to get. But I think that's kind of neat the way that turned out. So it's kind of a 2 for 1 bonus, I guess. But anyways, I think this was an experiment that worked very well, even though you should have used tissue paper, not deli paper. Now, what I also have is some canvas paper. Well, I thought it was paper, but it's actually sheets of canvas, and they came in a pad. I got them at Winners. You know how you can find at Winners scrapbooking stuff that is supposedly on reduced price? Well, there was a big pad of this paper, 10 sheets of it for $10. And so I thought, well, what the heck, I'll get some of this. So this is actually canvas. And what I did was, when I cleaned off my stencils, I laid them down on top of it, used a baby wipe to clean the ink off, kind of ran it through the holes of the stencil wherever it wanted to go. And if you look really closely, that's what you can see in the very background of this. It's not as bright because there wasn't as much ink as the other ones, but that's okay. Then I used background stamps with archival ink, and I used detailed stamps and just went all over it. Now, because this is on a type of canvas, this is very strong, it's very sturdy. So I don't think I will be using this in actual art journal pages. What I think I might do with it is actually use it as a cover for a bound journal, because it's like book cloth. It's very strong, so I think it will make a really nice cover for a book. So that was kind of a little accident that turned out to work really well. Now, the other accident, it's not really an accident. What I mean by this is another opportunity here is, let me get all this stuff out of the way here. This big sheet is just a piece of cheap newsprint, and I was using it to protect my work surface when I was spraying through the stencils and wiping them off. And so I would use it to blot up ink that was sitting on my stencils after I'd used them on the deli paper. But you look at the color you get from that. It was really neat, and texture. So then I just took some stamps and stamped over it, and the back's not so pretty, but that's okay, don't care. And here, I've got another collage sheet, because that'll be workable within my art journals as well, too. So, you see, nothing goes to waste, really, with this technique. So maybe later on, in another future video, when I use some of these in an art journal, I'll show you how they've worked out as elements for your art journal. But I think this is something that was a lot of fun to do, very therapeutic. You don't really think about what you're doing, and you get some really neat stuff. And anytime you don't have to think about it, and it comes out great, that's good for me. So, talk to you later.